Hello and welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 79. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. They truly don't. And today, we are entering the classroom with dark entities as the teachers.
Excuse me, class.
And I hear you thinking, what could you possibly learn from them? Could they possibly teach us? You might just be surprised. We're going to unpack, do dark entities reflect our inner shadow selves? And could this be why we attract them? Also, can the darkness around us teach us about our darkness within? And what do we do with the lessons and the learning? I'm going to share some of my personal learning, oh my goodness, that I've had over the years dealing with the darkness, and what I understand about a portion of my shadow self, we might say. So let's get into exploring the connections between our innermost darkness and those lurking lower vibrational beings who share this environment with us. So pencil and paper ready? The lesson starts now. Okay, so the first question, do dark entities reflect our inner shadow selves? And could this be why we attract them? And I'm going to say yes, and this is why. Dark entities in our environment can reflect our inner shadow selves, and this reflection may be the reason why we attract them. This concept is rooted in the psychological idea that our external experiences, situations we get into, the encounters we have with people often mirror our internal mental and emotional state. The thoughts, the words, the actions, the reactions that we create every day and in difficult situations. Now, when we're grappling with unacknowledged or unresolved aspects of our psyche, such as trapped emotions, repressed emotions, trauma, fears, or desires, these can manifest externally as a vibration around our energy fields. And this is what attracts the darker entities. This is what attracts the lower vibrational beings in our environment. So these entities are attracted to our innermost conflicts. And I know this because I deal with them all the time, personally and with my clients. And these entities help us to make visible and tangible the emotions and the reactions that create these vibrations that are pulsing out into the environment. When I work with my clients, I do a very detailed report about the emotions that I find within their physical bodies, their organs, their chakras, their meridian lines, and their energy field. So basically the physical body and the energy body. Now, people are usually quite shocked at what I find. But what I find is only what that person's higher self, or their soul essence, if you want to call it that, is what their higher self wants to show these people. They're wanting to use me as a channel to say to this person, this is what you need to work on. This is why your life's not going anywhere. This can be why you are stuck. Now, energy work, as you'll hear me say, is not the one and only approach. It's always medical first, then mental health, then the energy work. It has to be a holistic approach. All three areas need to be covered. Now, like I said, I often share with clients and anyone willing to listen really, that attracting dark entities can be understood as a call for contemplation, awareness, and a willingness to work on your personal growth. Now, this can be mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. People don't like to acknowledge the existence of these entities. And if they do, they want them to be dark and evil like you see in the movies. But really, that's not why they're here. They trigger us. They show us the darkness within us and what we need to work on to bring that darkness into the light, to integrate our shadow and our light selves together. Now, I'm going to get onto that a little bit later. The presence of these entities can signal that there are aspects of our shadow self, like I just said, that needs to be addressed. And a lot of people don't want to address this. They avoid dealing with their own darkness. But by confronting these emotions and these entities that are around us, we are given the opportunity to explore and understand the parts of ourselves that we've been avoiding or suppressing. And believe me, people do it all the time. I have been guilty in the past. I've got my hand up now. I've been guilty of avoiding dealing why I feel a certain way, why I react in a certain way. When you finally sit down and go, you know what, I'm just going to nut this out. I'm just going to work out. I'm going to unpack why I keep attracting these sorts of people, why I react a certain way to situations. And once you get to the core of why you're doing it, it's often quite confronting, believe me, because we are the cause of our own problems. And a lot of people don't like me saying that, but we are. And when you own that and you go, you know what, I'm just going to deal with it. I create my reality that I live in. And the entities that are around us, they're simply backing up was the word I was going to say. I can't think of another word at the moment, so we're going to go with that. They're simply backing up what we're creating. They're literally slamming it in our face sometimes going, you're creating this, you're attracting us, what are you going to do about it? Like the challenge has been put out. So I just used that word challenge, and it is seriously a big challenge. This confrontation with our inner selves, which can be represented by these dark entities that we attract, can be truly challenging. But it is a crucial step in the process of integrating our shadow self as part of our whole person. We are light and dark all at the same time. And our choices show which side of us that we tend to lean towards the most. Now, through this integration, we can achieve greater psychological balance. It affects our mental and emotional health. And when you have more self-awareness, you lead into living a more genuine, authentic, and fulfilling life. Now, that can be different things for different people. I live a very simple life, but now I'm aware of what I create with my shadow self. I work on not doing it as much, and you'll be surprised how much, once you're aware of it, and you'll go, oh, I created that in that situation, and that situation, and that situation. What am I doing? It's a pattern of behaviour, and you can't change it unless you're aware of it. You can do the self-work. You can work on this yourself constantly, but you can also see counsellors and mental health workers. So really and truly, the attraction of dark entities is not merely a reflection of our inner state, but also a minor and major catalyst for transformation and healing. This process isn't a quick one though. Sometimes people come to me and go, oh, you'll do an energy clearing for me, get rid of all my negative emotions, you fixed the problem. And I go, no, actually, I'm very honest about what I do. I can help clear your backlog of emotional imprints, trauma imprints, any cording, any psychic attack, any entities that are present. But then it's up to you to keep yourself clean energetically. There's always homework, which I'm going to talk about later on. Now, do these dark entities like teaching us? I had someone ask me that the other day, so I thought, right, I'm going to include that in my podcasting notes. I think, when I sat down and I thought about this, I think yes and no. I think it's kind of a double-edged sword for these entities. Yes, because they're kind of fulfilling their roles that they signed up for eons ago. Because remember, they're not here to frighten us and hurt us. They're here to help us understand our shadow selves. They're here to help us and challenge us. They're here to help challenge our inner thoughts, our emotions, and our reactions. So some of them like doing this work. Some of them don't like doing this work. That's what I've been told. And also the no side of it is because when we start to be more aligned with our emotions and we're more accepting, more aware, we observe and we don't create that continuously needed energetic food then they're just going to have to go elsewhere. It's harder for them to hunt down their next food source. I know that sounds gruesome, but simply they just hang around your energy field, feeding off the vibrations you're pumping out. Because everything you say or think or do creates a vibration. I know I keep repeating that, but it's the truth. I mean, people create emotions around all sorts of situations, but each one of us will have one or two or sometimes three main trigger emotions. If you can put a stopper on those, then you're cutting out most of the dark entity attachment that you're going to have to deal with. Oh, and don't forget, if you like the content of this podcast and you don't want to miss any future episodes, please subscribe. And you can share with your friends so we can get the message out there. We can spread the message about these paranormal pranksters and what they get up to. I would really appreciate it. So question 2, can the darkness around us teach us about our darkness within? And I've just covered a lot of that, but I want to look at it in all sorts of different ways today because people listening are all going to pick up little snippets of information from each section. We're all different and we all understand and hear information in different ways. Now, historically, this is an interesting man. The concept of human shadow self originates with theories of the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. He described the shadow as an unconscious part of the personality that contains our repressed weaknesses, desires, and primitive responses and instincts. This shadow self is composed of elements of our psyche that we often deny or are unaware of because they're deemed socially unacceptable or they're contrary to our own self-image, how we see ourselves or how our ego wants us to see ourselves, or even how we want others to see us. Engaging with the shadow self is a crucial aspect of personal growth and self-awareness, like I said earlier. But acknowledging it, that's the hard part. And then integrating these hidden parts of ourselves, by doing that, we achieve greater psychological balance. And we feel a sense of wholeness. I'm going to talk about my emotions that are triggered later on by my shadow self, or they're part of my shadow self, but I've integrated them now and I use them as examples all the time. What I'm trying to say is I'm not ashamed of doing these particular things. They are part of me. I embrace them. And the challenges that come up with them test me all the time. And am I going to respond in a dark way by using those emotional responses? Or am I going to be aware and go, you know what? Do I need to respond? Do I need to react? Are they part of is it my business to respond? Sometimes we get caught in other people's stuff that really isn't ours and we create more problems for ourselves that aren't even actually ours. Jung believed that this process, known as shadow work, involves recognizing and accepting the shadow's influence, thereby reducing its control over our behavior. And individuals can transform negative traits into a source of strength and creativity. Absolutely. I use my shadow traits all the time. They actually make me stronger and they make me more aware of, it's about how I respond. It's like, do I need to get caught in this? It all comes back to getting caught in the drama that I talk about all the time that's in society. Paranormal entities love drama because they know humans are riddled with it. We are drawn to it like moths to a light. Now, Jung also said that embracing the shadow self allows for a deeper understanding of others, and we start to foster compassion for other people and ourselves, building more self-acceptance and awareness. And this is the biggie, this is the big one, reducing internal conflicts. How often do we have emotions and trauma and reactions and negative people in our lives that just go round and round and round in our heads? And we get stuck in these patterns, in these repetitive patterns of always attracting the same people, the same emotions, the same responses. You gotta break the chain. So talking about breaking the chain, now we're going to look at how these fascinating entities teach us. What lessons can we learn from dark entities? Number 1 is the importance of confronting and understanding our fears and our negative emotions rather than avoiding and repressing them. Number 2, facing our emotions that we avoid and choosing a more beneficial way to respond. Once you do it a few times, you'll be surprised how easy it is to do. And then once you're doing it often, you don't even think about having to do it. You do it naturally. Number 3, facing our reactions. This can be tricky because sometimes we are ingrained to be in survival mode or to be in reactive mode, especially around particular people or situations. But facing these reactions and the personal situations that trigger us and looking at whether do we need to respond, is the situation our business? Are we being drawn into another person's drama and sometimes manipulation? Some people just like to pull the string on the top and then just watch it spin. And for whatever reason, they get off on that. And that's their shadow self to be worked on. Now, number 4, dark entities often symbolise the parts of ourselves that we reject. They really do. When I found that I was creating a particular emotion that I'm going to be talking about soon, I was like, oh, I never create that. Oh my goodness, that is not part of me. It was something I didn't want to identify with. But every time I do my clearing process and go through my list of emotions, that one popped up for me on the top of the list every time. Oh, we just have to acknowledge it. And by facing these entities, as we call them, that are connected to our emotions, we can uncover underlying issues such as unresolved traumas or deep-seated insecurities. Sometimes how we project ourselves is not something that's happened in the last days or weeks. Often I find it goes right back to childhood. It's about perceptions that are put on us by our parents and our caregivers. It becomes drummed into our brains that if we act a certain way, it's going against society and we're going to be shunned. And it's just things that happen to us in childhood can be truly traumatizing without even it actually being physically traumatizing. Oh my goodness, let's not get on that track. We'll keep going. The confrontation that we do bring to the surface promotes that self-awareness and resilience. I haven't talked about resilience yet. When you do this work and your self-awareness goes, oh, you're creating that again, you go, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. How can I respond in a better way? You're being more resilient. You're not letting people get to you. You're not getting caught in their drama. So you're keeping your energy cleaner by not absorbing everybody else's stuff. Number 5. Now, another lesson from these dark entities is the recognition of the duality within human nature. Don't be ashamed of your darkness. Own it. Bring those dark traits, those emotions that we create, bring them to the surface. Use them as a form of strength, a form of resilience. They are part of ourselves. We can't avoid them. We can't sweep them under the carpet. I can't get rid of the 2 that I'm going to talk about soon. They are part of me, but I own them. And Carl Jung often said, just as light can't exist without darkness, our positive traits, they're often balanced by the negative ones. Accepting this duality allows for a more holistic view of ourselves and other people. We start to accept other people on another level. Someone comes into the office and they're really grumpy and they won't talk to you and they're short when they speak and their tone is not good and their body language is not good. Instead of being reactive to that, they're not attacking you. They're simply showing you that something's going on in their life that's really challenging them at the moment. Don't get drawn into their negativity because they're not projecting it at you. It is simply how they're feeling. Because I did mention projection earlier. Quite often we feel attacked by the way people are projecting at us. Sometimes people aren't projecting. Sometimes they're just feeling a certain way and they're not realising that they're actually doing it externally. They think it's all internally. But then there are others the manipulators and the ones that like to spin that top and watch everyone get caught in the drama. There are people that do like to cause that sort of manipulation and that sort of projection. So we're getting ready for homework. By integrating these darker aspects, we can achieve greater emotional and psychological balance. Dark entities, these beings remind us that growth often comes from facing and integrating the most challenging parts of our existence. And believe me, these beings aren't going anywhere. They simply waft around in our environment 24/7. So when you're aware of what you're creating in a negative way and you don't create it anymore or not as much, you're not going to be attracting these beings to you. They are not going to hang around a person that creates a vibration if it's not what they're interested in. They just don't do it. They're only interested in the people that create what they want. So they will bypass you and move on to the next person. There's a couple of steps that I've identified that might help people understand it a little bit more. So the first step to doing your homework, it's basically being aware. You have to use this awareness all day, every day. And once you start adopting it, you're aware, you're observing what's going on in the environment around you, whether at home, socially, at work, at the movies, lining up at the bus. It's just that awareness that you have and that observing situations. And especially observing the situations and the people that trigger you. And I do have to say, it does get easier with the more practice that you do. And the homework's not hard. You can do it. You can start doing it right now. Start observing what you're thinking about. Who are you thinking about? Is it in a positive way? Is it in a negative way? It's actually kind of fun to do this when you start unpacking your psychological processes. You'll find stuff that you didn't even realise was there. So what I will say is be kind to yourself. Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed about what you create. It can take time to unpack it. So don't think that you're going to be doing the homework in the next week and bam, it's all done. No. It takes a while to do this work. And you just think of it as part of your daily awareness. You will get situations that will come to the surface that need to be unpacked. Once you've done that and you've got a level of acceptance about a particular situation, then you'll find something else will come up. And you'll slowly move through all these layers of your shadow self with the help of these entities that are poking you to realise, there's vulnerability there, there's shame there, there's blame, there's guilt, there's hatred. It's about being kind to yourself and going, okay, these emotions are showing up. I'm just going to deal with them one at a time, and you go with the one that comes first. Because sometimes the homework can feel a little bit overloading, believe me. I've been there and I've done that and I've pushed it all aside and not dealt with it. Quite often things will come round again. That circle will come back to you and you'll have another situation happen with a person and go, I didn't deal with that, did I? No. I swept it under the carpet. Yes. All right, now I'm going to lift that carpet. I'm going to pull out all that dirt and I'm going to deal with it. So once we start working on it, and we've identified elements of our shadow self, the second step is to start integrating these aspects into our conscious identity. This is what I'm going to talk about my experiences. 2 of my trigger emotions that I still create sometimes, that I used to create a lot in the past. Now, what are they? I constantly work on bettering these 2 traits of resentment and hostility. Resentment and hostility both appear in situations for me constantly. Now, this is where my very high standard of moral and ethical values are challenged. I just set really strong standards for my life and how I think other people should live their lives, which is really and truly none of my business. Now, let's look at resentment. Resentment used to appear when I was annoyed by someone getting away with corrupted ethics. And others around that particular person were blind to the deviousness or the immorality and just didn't see these corrupted values in that person. And I would get really resentful towards that person. Now, I had to learn not to let my emotions and my morals get involved in what or how other people represent themselves, as it is really and truly none of my business. Now, my resentment was pretty much always internal. It was probably 80% internal, 20% spoken. But in my mind, I would think about this person constantly and their behaviours and how others can't see it and why I can't do anything about it and why it is such a problem. And it would go on and on and on and on, disrupting my sleep, disrupting my daily life, kind of driving me bonkers. And I still deal with it occasionally now, but it's gone from being 100% maybe down to 10%. Sometimes it's triggered. Well, sometimes it comes up because the universe, or your spirit guides, your angels, whatever you want to call them, go, right, she hasn't created resentment in a while. Let's send in some dark entities and they'll trigger her and we'll see how she responds. So there's always the homework. There's always the testing. I didn't want to use the word testing, but I'm saying it now. We get tested all the time. And it'll be my response to getting an email from that particular person who lives on the other side of the world and how I respond to it in my physical or my energy body, because then what do? We're pumping out that vibration of resentment, and then we attract the lower vibrational beings that like resentment as their food source. We're all human though, I will say this. We can't stop doing something 100%, but it's the awareness and the observation that we're doing it which pulls us up in our tracks. And you actually become quite proud of yourself when you realise that you can stop yourself from being negative towards others or being negative towards yourself. Now, the hostility, oh my goodness, this one's a little bit more embarrassing. My hostility while I'm driving, which is really, really embarrassing. Now, this hostility can be both internal and it's external. Now, the internal fuming is usually about my perception of other people's laziness on the road, not following the road rules, dangerous behaviours. And I think I'm always right. It's not the case. I know that's not the case. So I don't create that hostility internally anymore because I know the paranormal beings are going to be attracted to it. Now, externally, I still fall in a hole sometimes. If I'm tired or I've done a lot of driving in a particular day or I've had a really hard day and I have to drive somewhere, hostility would appear to me as muttering negative words. If it's at night time, it can be flickering my car lights. It can be swearing out loud. It can be random hand gestures which are inappropriate to talk about, which is totally unnecessary because, again, I'm getting involved in other people's behaviours on the road that don't involve me. Yes, you do have to observe the road and be aware that people might change lanes without putting their lights on or observing yourself at a roundabout and just being cautious, but you don't need to be externally hostile. And within a few days of creating that external hostility and even the internal hostility, I would have to deal with the entities attracted to me because I've been hostile in those driving situations. So how do I know that? Are you going, how does she know that she's attracting them to hostility? Now, I've tuned into myself and I need to do an energy clearing. This is how I check to see whether I've got entities attached to me. Because I'll know, I start to feel a bit wonky in the head. I don't feel steady on my feet. My mind feels sort of like I've got brain fog. I can't think clearly. I know there's something attached to me. So I go through my list of 100 emotions and I'm always drawn to this particular column. And believe me, it contains resentment and hostility, amongst other emotions. And as I'm going down the list, even before I've got to hostility, what I'll do is I'll see in my mind me driving. It's like me stepping out of my body and observing me driving and maybe waving my fist or swearing under my breath, and I'll go, oh yes, I remember that hostile situation that I created inside myself and externally. And I'll go, okay. So I've acknowledged it. I did that. Well, that was a silly thing to do, wasn't it? And then I go through and I clear the entities that were attached to it. So depending on how hostile I am, how many emotional imprints I build up around that. So an imprint is every time you are intensely attached to a particular emotion, you create one episode. This is how I explain it to people. So if I've been on a particularly long drive and I was in a bad mood and I created lots and lots of hostility, I'm going to have maybe 2, 3, 4 entities floating around my energy field attracted to what I've done. Once I clear the emotions, the entities are like, they're not interested in me because I don't have that vibration anymore. So what do I do to solve my hostility on the road? Now when I'm driving, I am aware on the road, but I don't react in negative ways of other people's driving. I kind of think that I'm neutral now. I'm just like there. I'm just not responding. I stay calm and I just don't even think about lashing out. It is not part of my makeup anymore. But we're being tested all the time. It's not like you can tick it off the checklist. Oh, yep, don't have to worry about that anymore. It's a continual testing, but I like to think of it as a challenge. Am I going to attract these entities, or am I going to be aware of what I'm doing and not attract them? That's that challenge that I just like to do this every single day. So I hope you found this interesting today. I know I talk a lot and I waffle on a bit, but there's always little gems in what I share. And I hope that everyone that listens to this episode takes away something from this and can help themselves to not attract the dark entities anymore. So in episode 80, what are we talking about here? We are stepping into the dark recesses of the mind yet again. And we're going to be exploring the connection between mental health issues and dark energy beings. Is there a connection? And if so, what is it? Now, I will say about this episode, I always say when I'm doing these episodes that talk about mental health or emotions, is that I am not a medically trained doctor. I am not a mental health professional. I am simply sharing with you my energetic understanding through what I've gone through in my life. I'm 56, so I've gone through quite a bit. But also my clients that come to me, what I've learnt through their experiences, what they've learnt, how they have shifted through lots of darkness in their lives. So I'm presenting this episode on mental health conditions and dark energy beings purely from an energetic perspective. So please join me. I think you'll find it rather intriguing. So I will see you next week. So thank you for joining me today. And don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.